This is Tru Thoughts. I don't know what to call it. Podcast Zoom with special guest. Yeah, with special guest Louis Hemai. Hello, Louis.
Hey, Rob. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you? Thank you for joining me. You're in a
my absolute pleasure.
Great. You're in a quite hot, humid top floor flat. We've just been speaking before this. Are you all right?
Yeah, exactly. I think wearing this bucket hat was a bit of a mistake, to be honest with you. I'm in the third story of a townhouse in Wimbledon, and with this blazing heat. So I'm just trying to pull through this, to be honest, and wait to get outside and soak in some water.
Great. So we're going to chat. We've just released your album on Tru Thoughts. It's out now, CD at the moment, and digital and streaming. We were talking about doing vinyl, but vinyl's crazy to press up at the moment, so we're not doing that. It's called Strange Beauty, and we're just going to have a little chat just about your background, the album, music you're into. So should we just start with you're 22 years old, and
I'm 22 now, yeah.
And 22 now, and you're I would call you sort of multi-instrumentalist producer. Would you describe yourself in that way? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly that. I'd say. I think the terms both producer and multi-instrumentalist are pretty widely used nowadays, I think. And but it's more the multi-instrumentalist side for me is more of just a way to express my ideas and the emotions and musical influences and stuff through the use of production, and using the two roles simultaneously to create a piece of music which just resonates with me. And so I'd definitely say that. I'd in my own head, it's like I'm always on my laptop and in opening Logic and stuff, and working on the music very much in a sort of electronic environment, but with sort of like a jazz approach. It's a really it's a hybrid way of making music, I guess, but it's definitely the way that I seem to be going and making the music. So yeah, multi-instrumentalist and producer sounds
and
beautiful.
What instruments do you play?
My main instrument is guitar. That's the instrument that I've been playing since I was 9, I think, and obviously I'm 22 now. But it's been very much a sort of learning process, and I had a couple of teachers when I was younger. Shout out Carl and James, but they both taught me the basics and stuff, and how to improvise, and have an ear for it really, and just how to jam. And I've always took them principles and then just sort of gone in sort of a self-taught way from there on, and the same with bass, synths. I'm a massive synth head. I absolutely love synths. I've got one right here in this little setup. I won't get it out because it's a bit small right now, but and then keys as well, and then just bits of percussion here and there. But yeah, that's sort of like the umbrella of instruments that I usually go towards. And but it's very dependent on how I'm feeling. Sometimes in a track there might not be any guitar, even though it's my main instrument. It might just be the way I'm feeling on that day of making it. But yeah, I definitely consider as well the laptop and the production software and all the gear, the microphones, the mixing desks, everything to do with it, an instrumental choice as well, as much as the others. So yeah, shout out the laptop. You can do amazing things on it.
Yeah. And it's your brother plays drums. That's the only thing you're not pretty much not playing on your album. Is that right?
Yeah. Sam Hemus, my brother, is a phenomenal, magical drummer, and just brings it to life. You could I'll program a sort of drum machine thing in originally, and then I'll send it to him and I'll be like, what do you think of this, bro? And he'll be like, yeah, it sounds really good. But then he'll put like his own all his own influences and expression into it, and just transform it to like a completely different groove from where it sort of began. So yeah, it's definitely all my brothers doing the drums.
Okay. And you come from a musical family. I know when we were first speaking to you about signing with you, I think usually I ask artists when we're having that initial chat where, where have you heard of the label? I think you were the first one to make me feel really old and say your dad put you onto the label, but your dad was involved with music, and he worked with Lizzie Parks, who we've also worked with. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that. It was he's got an amazing album out, and he was called Roads Mode, and it was he was a keyboard player and producer and programmer, and I'm pretty sure it got released around very early 2000s, so it was part of that whole sort of new touch of that electronic jazz coming out from the UK. It was all part of that, and it did. Yeah, it featured Lizzie Parks on the single of that album. Who is a mutual contact in many ways. But yeah, he's the person that I grew up around and was very inspired, and sort of, I guess that's the birth of how I started making music as well. I mean, even from I was on his tracks, one of his tracks on the album, and you can just hear me when I'm like a toddler, me and my brother Sam on drums, just laughing in the background, and we're like, oh, there's our first appearance in a musical track. And I guess it went from there to sort of now, and just being brought up with that sort of musicality around me and it's very much like a passive thing as well. Like it was never something that was like, you have to do this, or you have to make music in this genre or this style. I think it was just the passive thing of me getting to a certain age and being like this, I want to start writing my own songs, producing my own songs, sort of having that creative control over them. And it was all just very much inspired by my dad's music and stuff, and all the stuff that he used to listen to, that it was just getting soaked in my brain from an early age. So sort of, I guess that's why I'm such an avid fan of a lot of the artists that I listen to nowadays.
He was he okay? I know because I run a record label. Often when people, I'm speaking to people like friends or family, and meet people, they say my children are 9 and 6, and they'll say, "Oh, do you want them to be artists?" And I would say, "Oh, you know what? Because I've worked with so many artists, and I say artists work so hard, but the music industry is so tough." I would say, "Oh, it would sort of make me a bit concerned if they want to be musicians or artists," which is a really weird thing to say, but I know if they wanted to, I could understand that. I know my mum, struggled with me when I wanted to just run a record label. She thought, "What are you doing? You need to get a proper job." So but he was okay. He's quite happy with just following your vision. And you're very young still, aren't you? At 22, and I think there's plenty. I think what probably your generation, maybe my generation a little bit before that, I think we began to realise there's none of these real jobs for life anymore or anything like that, is there? So there's a period of time of just trying things out and figuring out what you want to do. And I think maybe even the pandemic has done about quality of life is probably more important than the rat race of making money or whatever as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my mom and dad have always been super supportive, because I guess it was, I don't know, maybe because in such a musical family anyway, I had the privilege of having sort of that the blessing, as you'd say it, and it was it's definitely a privilege, and I'm super humble to be surrounded by all of that. So it just made the process of me making it and saying, "Oh wow, I want to be a producer, I want to produce my own songs," bloody blah, a bit more sort of, okay, well, yeah, you can do that, like, we believe in you. And yeah, very, very nice. And it's been a conversation that I've been having a lot recently with a load of different people, and everyone's got a different story, a different background, and it's so crazy to hear all the different perspectives from it, because I'm so used to it being in my world. So when I speak to someone who wasn't from a musical family that is a producer now, say, or like a programmer, or a DJ or anything, I'm like, wow, it's very admirable, to have done that. And I like to think that I probably had it easier than a lot of people, because I was brought up in a musical family. and very much it was quite a self-taught family as well. Like my granddad was, and my obviously my dad and my brother and stuff, and pretty much all self-taught really, apart
Wow.
from a couple lessons here or there. So it's just you know I guess passively I've just been brought up to have that ear for, especially for harmony and different rhythms. Yeah, it's a blessing, to be honest.
So when did it? We'll get on to the album a little bit, but just probably if we just find a little bit about your journey pre doing the album with Tru Thoughts,
Yeah.
with sort of releasing music. So you did you self-release initially? Is that right? The first under the Hemai name?
Yes, it was a self-release which was under my own label, which I created with a independent distributor. So yeah, there was some help with sort of like the marketing side of everything. But yeah, it was basically a sort of it was a hybrid self-release. It was under my own name, and it was just running through an independent distributor. And that journey was completely different to the Tru Thoughts journey, because it was everything was, at the start of it, it was okay, let's utilize everything that I have here and now. So this synth that I've had for years, which was passed down from my dad, and then my brother on drums. Let's record wherever we can, basically, and make the most of this situation of just sort of being a very much a self-releasing, self-funding artist and producer. And it was such a learning curve for me, because I was able to go, okay, so like what are the problems, and what are the issues, and how do I overcome them? I'm very much it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, but it was like I'm such a sort of perfectionist with like the audio quality, and I'm a bit of an audiophile when it comes to tones and the recordings of it. So like that was the biggest barrier for me, was like, how do I achieve this sound without having the means to do it with this gear, this equipment? And it's really just about sort of like trial and error, because that whole EP was just me finding my own feet, making music in sort of a production environment, which was very sort of like the first steps for me. But luckily, because of like the relationships with my brother and the passive listening and the music I'd listened to like before when I was a kid, and still now, it's so embedded in me that when I sort of honed in on all my production techniques and stuff, and found my feet as a producer, it just became a lot easier for me. And all this experimenting and trial and error, still now, like every day I'm learning something new, but like even like then and now, like the common ground is that it's just I'm making stuff from experimentation, from trial and error, and I'm just naturally gravitating towards these certain things and places where I prefer to make music, or the way that I prefer to make music, blah de blah, and all the instruments or whatever. It just makes a lot more sense now. I look back on it to when I started out doing it, because it's like at the time I was very much just, my head was a blur making the music, and I was just like, this works, piecing it together like a jigsaw. Whereas for Strange Beauty, it was like, okay, like I know where like my soul sort of lies in the sound. So it's like I could just pick and choose of the stuff I wanted to achieve, and it just, as I gradually learned and got better, and as trying to pinpoint the sounds that I genuinely like and gravitate towards, it just became an easier process of every day just working on music like 24/7, and being able to get to a point where I can just sort of make a song now with and express myself how I want, as opposed to eyes closed. That was still like the learning curve of doing so.
So I mean, even as you talk, but I think you've got this which I sort of seeing you and seeing sort of the best artists that we work, there's like quite confidence about what you're doing, and even with the sense of I'm just curious, because did you were just up for just releasing on your own? You didn't have a thought of I'm going to try and get music signed to a label. You just, and I know it's relatively easier to release music, but you just felt, look, I'm going to try this and see what happens. But is that right?
Yeah, and just sort of, put it out into the world, because, everyone that when they were finished, like, I had as I said, as an audiophile and as a like a perfectionist of the music, it was like, I have to get these tracks done before I show anyone. So they were very much in my head only, and me and my brothers and the vocalists on it, were really the only people that heard it, because I was so, protective over people hearing it without it being perfectly done. And I know that's definitely, it's not usually people would share it. I'm one of the only people that I know that didn't, and I think that might be a bad thing or a mistake that I made. But because now, I'll send it as a demo or whatever to, what do you think of this? Or like, how does this sound to you? Whereas before I was like, no, it's all mine, it's mine, and keep it to myself and stuff. So yeah, it was just more so like, let's get it out into the world, and regardless how it's put out there, and just see how people resonate with it, whether people like what I'm doing, whether people enjoy it, whether people like listen to it when they're chilling or want to have a dance to it. Like, it's all these different like variables which really just made me want to put it out and see how people reacted to it, because I could make music for years and years and not put it out, and just have it to myself and listen to it myself, because I guess you make the music that you want to hear, right? And so it's like, I could just listen to that by myself, but I guess putting it out into the world, it just seemed right, and I thought, yeah, why not?
I think that's the thing. I'm definitely, from working with different artists over the years, you can see, I think there's some artists who they almost don't need any feedback. They'll do their thing, and then like, here's the music out of these, which do you like? I think the only thing that I feel is sometimes it's the worst if there's an artist who is making a lot of music and they're not sharing it, and it's not getting released. And that's not even on Tru Thoughts, that's other people that I know and other artists. Sometimes there's a few people that I know, just like, you should just put it up on Bandcamp at the very least, just share it with the world. I think that can be sometimes the bit of getting lost. Our artists can get lost in it. But you seem quite, I think, when we initially started working with you, which I think I've mentioned to you before, like Quantic, I was quite surprised at how young you were. I remember when I think we initially got in touch with you, and then I was asked how old you were, and then I remember saying that to Paul, my business partner in Tru Thoughts, about, look, this guy's really young and he's really talented, and which is true. And I just said, I'm not getting sent lots and lots of demos from someone so young at a quite high level of the production, the musicality, your arrangements, and there's songs going on and everything. So that that's, at least from my side at Tru Thoughts, I think you are, alongside Quantic, probably one of the youngest artists that we've done a debut album with, which I wouldn't necessarily call. I think some albums are. So there definitely are learning curves. You can see we're putting music out as an album, but an artist is finding its feet and they're just developing. But you seem to just, you set yourself quite a high standard, I think, which is good. And I know the music that you're into and the people you listen to are, like high level. And I think you probably in your own mind set yourself a level of you want it to be lots of songs on here, intricate production, great musicality. But also, I think the great thing of what I like is it's not lost in, hasn't got too noodly and all of that. There's good structures and songs and arrangements within everything that you do. So, which is, it's a big skill. Hopefully I'm not sounding patronising by saying you're doing it very young. But,
actually, I'm so grateful to hear it, because it's, it's not, it's one of them things that I do always think sort of, I need, because I am listening to, say, like George Duke or Avidly or Herbie Hancock and D'Angelo and all these like huge people, and it is very much a thing of me that I'm like, I've got to keep going until I'm so like, to have that, for you to say that is really, really heartwarming, to be honest. And yeah, I guess that's such a at 22, it's nice to sort of get that get that response from just making the music that I want to make, you know. So yeah.
And we've had great support for your music. And I mean, even before when we signed you, I mean, I know Jos Peterson played your initial self-released EP, but even with the recent album, it's like Jam Supernova, you know, Joe Wiley on Radio 2, Tom Robinson, Jeff Young on Jazz FM, Jack Saunders, KCRW, like just a real good mixture of people, like lots of people on Worldwide FM have been supporting. So it's been in an interesting place, isn't it? So from the mainstream of Radio 2 to sort of heads on Worldwide FM have been playing it as well, which it's a hard thing to achieve, I think, as well, that side.
Yeah, that specifically that Joe Wiley one on BBC Radio 2 with "We Could Be Jaded" of all the tunes. I was like, hang on a second, there's like a beat switch in there, there's a key, there's like key change, and I'm like, how is this on Radio 2? So it was a massive surprise to me, but yeah, it was a good surprise.
And I think that's one of the things that we've seen. I like working. You've seen just an honest artist. Like for me, I don't A&R too heavily with anything we do, and we sort of just leave you be. You were sending us bits of music, and everything you were saying, like, this is good, just carry on doing what you're doing. But I feel almost with you, you're sort of A&Ring within yourself, and I suppose with us, we're literally just figuring out on delivery dates and when things might be coming out. That was all we were doing. You seem to be very focused and finishing and hitting deadlines as well. Yeah, through sort of pandemic time as well, with everything that's going on. You know, maybe we'll talk a bit. Actually, before we get into that, just you mentioned some of your influences. Is there any sort of specific songs or albums or music that have influenced you, that you would feel influenced into album? Not like a direct influence, but you know, something that you you know, because if people ask me what influences you, and I would say, you know, Public Enemy and hip hop and all that, but it doesn't. We're not a hip hop label, but there's something that just influences what we're about as a label, and punk and things like that. That DIY attitude. So, what do you think? Some of the sort of artists or genres of music that you know have felt that impact, you know, while you were recording this album?
For me, like. And it might not even come across in the music, like you were saying, like it's not a direct thing, but like it's the whole of the Latin community, you know, like Brazilian jazz and especially Brazilian jazz. You know, all the sort of big people to the smaller people, you know, and everything that comes out from Brazil and did in sort of like that 70s and 60s and 70s era of Brazilian music really is like, that's the biggest genre that I listen to. You know, all the sort of rare records to the common records, everything within that bracket. Definitely, I think it's more so like the natural, like passively again, it's like the chord progressions. Like I'd be listening to a record from João Gilberto, and I'd be listening to it, a new record, so that I haven't heard before, and I'd hear like a chord progression in there, and I'd be like, that sounds so familiar. And this was after making Strange Beauty as well, and I'd like, what chord progression is that? Like, what chord is that? And then it will be in like, say, like Gone Surfing or something, because I think naturally, like the tones and the vibe that they, like Brazilian jazz artists and bands, sway towards, often I always feel I hold really close to me, passively though, like because it is such a big listening for me. I guess it's like it just naturally rubs off on me. But yeah, I'd definitely say, and bands in particular like Azimuth, for Strange Beauty, like I remember at the time of making it, I didn't get a lot of chance to actually listen to music because I was just making the music 24/7, and I was like, hang on a second, I gotta make I'm making a 10-track album. Like all the time I just wanted to spend on making the tunes and sort of really just getting into the nitty-gritties of it, and like the sound design and stuff, and really sort of show my expression through the music. So I didn't get a lot of time to just listen to music, like sit down and listen to music. But like when I did, it would just be like, if I finished for the night at say 11 o'clock or midnight, and I just, I'd miss tea, so I'd go and cook some tea at midnight or whatever, and I'd just sit down and put some wax on, put the vinyl on, and because my collection is predominantly Brazilian jazz, I'd just whack one of them on, and that would be what I'd listen to in between sort of making the album. Okay. And again, it was like a passive thing, but when I look back on it, I'm like, oh, hang on a second, and then you hear some of the rhythms in there, and I'm like, it must have rubbed off. So yeah.
Are there any sort of tips for anybody listening or watching this that you'd recommend, any artists, albums or tracks specifically that have influenced you that you tell people to check out?
Yeah, Azimuth again, like they've been one from the beginning for me, but still like such a recent like daily listen, because I feel Azimuth are just, as a producer, like and an engineer, and the tones they use, and they're so like boundary pushing. Like I think the track I think it's called Partido Alto. I think I might get that wrong, so don't quote me on that. But it's Partido. It's the first track of the intro track on Light as a Feather. Wait, Light as a Feather? Is it Light as a Feather? Maybe, I'm not sure. The heat is getting to me. But yeah, there's a track called that, and I swear there's like reverb on the bass, and like which you get told all these like views and stuff from like people saying, never do this, this is rule 101 of production, don't do this, and then like on a slap there'd just be like spring reverb or something, and you're like, what? And it's like, I guess that for me was a massive learning curve of just being like, it doesn't matter about any in my opinion anyway, for the music that I make, it really doesn't matter about any theory or like handbook textbook techniques, and it really is just like whatever sounded good, I'd do it regardless of if the stuff that people don't really sort of, as a listener, as a consumer, wouldn't really recognize, I don't think. But it's like, as an engineer and a producer, they're sort of like, there's no-go zones and whatever as in textbook format anyway. But I think getting past that and sort of being like, whatever does float your boat, do it, I guess. Like, I guess that would be, for myself and for other people, like the main tip, because like when I heard that tune by Azimuth with like reverb on, and it was like on the kick drum and everything, which I've always been told, never use reverb on low frequencies, it just gets muddled and all of this stuff, like it's frequency clashing, but it sounds so good. So it was like, let's experiment a little bit. If this band that I admire are doing it, then why can't I, sort of thing. So yeah, that was Azimuth, and yeah, just loads of Airto, Moreira, and as well, I love the early sort of like Jamiroquai albums. I think and Rebirth. I love the Rebirth. These really all just sort of tick the boxes for me in terms of like an engineering and production point of view, because it was like, again, it was like defying what teachings said. And I don't want to be sort of that, that guy that is like, don't do what the people say, sway a little bit left. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but it was definitely listening to them artists, which I really, really love and have always listened to, was massive for me to hear them sort of just experiment and go beyond the limitations, and out of the ordinary. That's always stuck with me.
Even with all those references, even with Jamiroquai, it's not straight up soul, jazz and funk, and you can see there is a Brazilian influence in Rebirth and Jamiroquai as well, isn't there?
Yeah,
a little bit
exactly.
Think on. So yeah. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So just with the album, I'll just have a little chat with you on that. Like, how would you describe it? What I know genres are a thing. I mean, we try and avoid, but they're a necessary part of the music industry. But for where you're at, what if someone was to say to you, okay, what type of music is your album? How would you describe it? Maybe do one for someone who doesn't understand much about music, and one for maybe somebody who is nerdy. But I'm curious how you would.
For me, it's definitely like, and I always say this about. That I don't think there could really be like a tag on it, but in terms of like the brackets of what it's in, it's somewhere between soul music to electronic music to sort of like broken beat and new jazz, electro, like all these different things merged into one melting pot. But I think the big thing for me is that I always and I've had to think about this because I've been asked it so many times, and like, what is it sort of thing? And I guess it's like that sort of approach that you'd have with jazz music, and very improvised and off the fly and very present tense. That really resonates with me, and because it was such a thing when I was growing up, and to now, what I love to do is just jam. Regardless of if it's right or wrong, it works, it sounds good, great, like that's what I love. So it was like, I'd always say for me, how I'd look at it is like in terms of the production anyway, is like, and the instrumentation is like a jazz approach to sort of electronic production, and which sits in between broken beat now and then, down tempo now and then, but it's just little sprinkles here and there, really.
And it's definitely one of those albums. I know for us, I said that to you sort of soon after it came out. I mean, it's the type of album that it's not one of those that someone's going to listen to in one go and get it. It is a repeated listening album. It's definitely something you just got to put on. It's, if you skip the tracks or skip the, between the tracks, you don't really get because it just builds and there's layers and going up and down. If you for you, if there might be someone listening to us that hasn't gone into the album yet. What would you recommend? What's like your favourite? Or if someone was saying, look, I've got time to listen to one track before I decide whether to commit to listen to the album, what would you recommend to them to listen to get into?
For me, it would be, it's so hard, but
you can do two, but
I think Brothers Shuffle, and Noah probably. I think for me, because I think they both share very much the same DNA, in my opinion. Again, like I could say, if it was for someone that loved really sort of experimental stuff, and I'd say check out We Could Be Jaded or and stuff like that.
You're gonna list the whole album? No.
I think it would be them two, Brothers Shuffle and Noah. Yeah.
And there's quite a few different vocalists on the album. Do you want me to say who they are? Do you want to list everyone who's on there?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you've got the CD.
Yeah, I've got the CD. So I'll list them all so we don't forget. So it's Late Full Stop, Wallace. I hope I'm pronouncing all of these right. Amelia Anastasia, who sings on Noah Noah, which you just recommended. Fifi Robbo, is that pronounced?
Robbo.
Okay. Ruby Wood, who's from sings with Submotion Orchestra, and Marilissa, who we work with again on Tru Thoughts, and Laura Roy and Wadley Green as well. So there's you put your effort into work with a variety of vocalists as well. But there are in fact, I love all the songs on there, but one of my favourite songs on the album is Gone Surfing as well, which is an instrumental track. And I think we're about to release the instrumentals, but on Bandcamp the instrumentals are all there when they came out as a deluxe version straight away. But because I like the instrumentals are great alongside the original thing. But Gone Surfing is one of my tunes that I sort of keep going back to it as well. It's just got something a little bit special on there as well. So.
No, that's good to hear, because that was again, it's the outro, because it was genuinely the last track that I made out of the 10 tracks. But it was just sort of like again, I always feel, because with the instrumentation, it's like, because it is an instrumental, it's like I have complete freedom to express these instruments however I'd want, because if it was collaborating with a vocalist or however, there'd be some stuff that I'd have to take out so it doesn't sound like because it's already quite very busy, like in terms of the projects, and just the way that I like to make music is quite busy. But sort of making space for certain aspects or whatever. So when I did the instrumentals, it was like, okay, let's just go completely wild with the expressions, with the instruments, and just sort of make a piece of music which was just very self-explanatory,
Cool. So just with I mean, we touched on it before. You were recording through the sort of pandemic and everything. We sort of it's been all this ups and downs as the whole album's been recorded. I think I can't recall. Did we signed you? I'm sort of losing track on time. Was it just before the first lockdown we signed you? Or I can't quite remember.
It was as it sort of hit, I think. Because I remember we met in Brighton.
Yes. It was all sort of buzzing that it might be lockdown might happen or something. I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I think the office would just sort of like, I'm not sure you mentioned it. I think it might have just either shut down for a bit and then reopened because of the restrictions or whatever. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah, it was definitely very, very much at the start of it. So the album was throughout of it, and it's so crazy. I don't know if you know this, but I signed on May the 7th and released on May the 7th. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's mad.
So you literally 1 year exactly from signing to. That's pretty good going as well. That's not bad. So. So yeah, I mean, how I know it's a debut album for you, so no different. But I mean, we were definitely dealing with sort of artists who we've been working with already, and then lockdown was like, oh god, how's it going to? What's your experience of recording an album in lockdown? Were you freaking out just because of everything going on? Like a lot of people were just away from everything, or did it help you get through it, or was it, where was your head at while you recorded this?
It was honestly very sort of, it was a period where I could just really knuckle down with it with no distractions. And I don't know when it would have been complete if we wasn't. So because and it's always something I'll be able to remember that process by as well, making it through that. It definitely, I wouldn't say it didn't jade any of the process necessarily in terms, because the studios were still open and stuff, so it was really nice to sort of have both sides of being at home and making it to doing it in the studios and stuff. But it was definitely a very full focus thing, and I think that was sort of the silver lining of it from my perspective, because it was like, this is basically, I was lucky to be able to make an album in that time, and sort of keep the inspiration and whatever. It's a blessing, and I was very humbled to be able to actually have something to do, to be honest, and it being music just made it better, so.
Yeah, I mean, from our side, you just seemed very focused on making it happen. You were just like, okay, look, this is all going on, but you were. I know a lot of people sort of joke that that's what artists are. You can be quite insular and just stuck in rooms with instruments, man. But I think there was another side. I think we were quite conscious as well. I think for some artists, it definitely worked. I know from the amount of demos we've got. Probably since towards the end of last year, I've never had as many demos, which is obviously lots of people recording over lockdown. But I think there was another side with some artists. Just there was other pressures, because lots of artists have part-time jobs and they were losing work, and all of those pressures can obviously interfere with that creative process. So it's definitely not one rule for all. But I think I noticed from the outside, I felt like you were quite focused on it, or just, I've got to make this happen, and you seem to do that very well. And we were sort of just leaving you to it. You did a great job, obviously, as well. So with what goes on, just with how everything is at the moment as an artist, like you're a newer artist, sort of making your way in the music industry. Now, as a label, we've been going 20 years. So historically, I mean, we started at the time there was piracy, and we knew we were going to release Bonobo's album and everybody would download it for free. So we were almost budgeting, you know, can we sell 1,000 vinyl, a few thousand CDs then? But very much for your generation, you come into a thing where there's a sort of world of Spotify where, I mean, there's money there's income to be made from Spotify, but it's not very much. And I know they talk vinyl resurgence, but ultimately it's Adele albums and Rolling Stone reissues and all of that. It's not necessarily the grassroots new music isn't doing the vinyl boom. What's your take on how the industry is, you know, for anybody who's an artist listening, or people curious about how it is for you as an artist, you know, releasing music in the current climate?
I think the main thing for me is definitely like the consumption value of it is definitely because of DSPs and stuff like that, you know, having
I'll just mention, in case people don't, DSP is the streaming services, Spotify, Apple, just in case people don't know that.
So that sort of accessibility to just skip a song if you don't like the first 3 seconds of it, I think for me that's like, I guess having the privilege of being able to listen to vinyl and stuff like that, you know, and that being my preferred way of listening to music as well, or CDs or whatever, just a physical format of it, so you can actually, because you have to sort of listen to the music without having the freedom to skip it. I think that's definitely something for me to always consider when making music, like sort of, I guess, and it depends on the genre as well, but like, I guess if you're making music to a DSP format, it might have limitations and boundaries on your expression of it. So I think it's always something worth considering, that if it was on physical, is it still as much as of a listening experience, you know, for the consumer or whatever. So I think that, I mean, for me, that's at the forefront of, you know, if it was a 7-minute track, is it, you know, it's debatable whether that's going to do well on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. But if it was on a physical thing, everyone would, you know, you want to listen to that 7-minute track. So I guess it's making music without any of the modern limitations on it is something that I definitely advise and definitely advise myself always to do, because you never know where the music can take someone, you know, whether that last 2 minutes of a track could be the best thing they've ever heard, but because of DSPs or whatever, you might not get to hear it. So yeah, I think it's definitely something, that's what I think of the consumption of the industry at the moment, and I do think whoever wants to listen to it, it has the, you know, can listen to it. So I think it's definitely down to the person as well, you know, and, you know, whether they've got the time to do that, and it all boils down to different stuff at the end of the day. But personally, I think that's my sort of view on it.
Yeah, I don't think that's one of the things, as we say constantly to you and to sort of everybody we work with. That's why it's about sort of having longevity with music and albums. And I think it's also not necessarily about playing the game of formats, and that could be whether it's, you know, vinyl, just make a good song. You know, if you've got a great 2-minute song and you were planning to do a single on 7-inch, we wouldn't say to someone, add another minute to it if it is great at 2 minutes. And equally, I think that's the one thing with the streaming services, because there's a culture there where, you know, it's unlikely to get on playlists if the song is over a certain amount of time. And I think that's something we're very vocal about with our artists. Say, look, we can do an edit of the song if you need to, but the original song is the original song. But I think, I mean, the advantages of all of that, I mean, in a way, I said the pros of it, like, I think there was you got a good experience from self-releasing music. I would have definitely noticed when we've worked with newer artists who've self-released music and then they've worked with us, they've got an understanding of, I mean, the music industry is crazy and there's so much that goes on behind the scenes to make a record get played anywhere, pretty much. There's lots going on behind the scenes. And I think by self-releasing, you get experience of what goes on and how the industry works. So, and that's part of what's gone on with Spotify. Technically, I suppose everybody can have their 15 minutes of fame. a lot of it won't get heard is the reality. That's what I think it's, 60,000 songs a day get uploaded to Spotify, something crazy like that. Yeah.
Crazy.
Which of course, a huge chunk of that will never, ever be listened to. That's the reality of it, apart from those people who uploaded it and their friends, minute friends and families. So it's a different, but I think it's, I think you've shown just be patient and just make good quality music, isn't it? I think that's
and I guess stay as cliche as it sounds, like staying so authentic, because like there's been many of times in my head where I've been like, shall I do that because it might pop a little bit more, which makes people like, if it was like saying when day breaks it's got a fall to the floor, and it was sort of like the decision that I had to make was like, do I make the kick like so it's like a club cheat, but then it's like no. I think that was my view on it anyway, is just really just making the music that you want to hear at the end of the day, and that's something that I tell myself every day when I open Logic to when I close it, is do what you sort of, what comes out comes out.
And people find music eventually. It's about the long game, isn't it? I'm just curious about in a sort of current scene of music, of releases or artists. Are there anyone that you're sort of feeling or inspiring you? And again, that might not necessarily be the same genre of music, but sort of any sort of music tips or anybody that you're liking at the moment that you're getting inspiration from.
I absolutely love the community of artists that are part of Stone's Throw in America. So like Mind Sign, I think is amazing. Of course, all their back catalogue as well, but Kiefer, I love Kiefer right now.
They seem to be coming with a little thing at the moment, don't they? Stone's Throw. I definitely notice it's because it's away from hip hop, but it's really good what's going on as well, what they're doing. So.
Exactly, and it's definitely a nice break for me to listen to that as well, because apart from all the stuff that I listen to, it's very much a sort of like modern approach to like that lo-fi sound, which I don't usually like delve into that too much, but like I love the stuff they're coming out of right now. It's very, very inspiring, especially as like a synth fiend. It's they're releasing some crazy synth music. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And then what were your plans? What you tried? I know we've had interest at the time of recording this, like Latitude are interested in booking you to play live, and it's as we're recording this, we're not quite sure where things are. It might be another delay before everything opens again, but what your plan? I understand you want to go live, is that right? You're not a DJ. You want to do your band, in fact, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry to be an absolute bugbear. This might have to be a little cutout, but I just need to put my laptop on charge. I've just realised. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
20 seconds.
I'll plug the album.
Yeah. Hear all the percussion jangling. So let me pause so you can cut.
We might leave it in, so don't worry, it's fine.
Yeah.
So with the live, you want to go out live. Is that your
Yeah, definitely, because it's again like the music isn't made to be in a live environment, so it gives me like an extra challenge to sort of go, okay, how do I make all these tunes live now? And having sort of been able to have that MD approach to it, the direction of the music and stuff is an extra thing for me to delve into, sound wise and music wise. So it's really exciting, and so I'm starting to just practice it and get it tight and stuff. And it's at the moment it's looking like it's a trio.
Okay, good job. So it's always a relief from a label person hears that when someone says, "I'm going to be 10 people in the band," and it's so hard to get gigs if there's 10 people in the band. So trio is always a nice word to hear when you're on a record label.
Yeah, trio. So
with a view to expanding, obviously, as things
yeah,
keep going.
yeah. I guess like the more music that's made, the more how do I increase it and desize or whatever. But yeah, it's a trio, and it's myself utilizing a way to describe it. I would say that it's like doing production on stage sort of thing. So it's like making use of technology and everything, and I'll be playing guitar, bass, keys, and synth simultaneously. I don't know, the arms come from somewhere, but yeah, all together, and then with Sam, my brother, on drums, and Fifi Robbo on vocals, and so it's going to be a trio setup, and so it's very much like production on the fly, so doing it wherever it goes, and again, like an improvised approach to it. None of the songs will be rehearsed in like section. It will be whatever I'm feeling on stage at that moment is what I'll record and sample, and sort of do this technology thing. It's very hard to explain. It's very complex, I think, and from someone who doesn't listen to music, make music, I'm going to stop it there because I can go for hours. But yeah, it's a trio setup, and yeah, it's going to encapsulate the environment of the music. Great. Just in a live manner.
So I mean, I know at some point we're going to get to that, hopefully soon, hopefully Latitude, hopefully a few other places when things open up, which is there. So look, it's been it's been really great. It's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you for putting the time aside. I'll give it one more plug. So it's out now. Hemai, Strange Beauty, CD, digital streaming, do support. We'll do the label bit there. And look, thank you. Actually, just before we go, if you want to let people know, I know social media, we always say to our artists, don't get too lost in social media, don't get worried about the likes and returns and all of that. But I know you use a bit of social media. People want to follow you, see what you're up to. What do you use? What's the best place to go to?
Yeah, so my most active profile would be on Instagram or YouTube. I'm starting to delve into the YouTube world. I don't know what will come out of it, whether it's going to be maybe some like breakdowns or whatever. But I'm definitely looking to get more into that, and Instagram as well. That's like my main thing. But everything really, it's just and it's just Hemai music, So
Hemai.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's worth saying. But yeah, it's it's social media is a weird one at the moment, but
so we've just had a little bit of technical issues, but we're back now with Louis Hemai talking about his album. And I was just asking you about the sort of balance between an artist and doing your music and being creative on that side in social media, which behind the scenes is a little bit of pressure to post up everybody who's supporting you and be the life and soul of every online party that's going on and make sure everybody's paying attention to what you're doing. Wondering how you balance that. I know us as a label, we're always telling everybody, don't go for the likes. Just if you can do something that balances who you are and reps who you are, do that, but don't get lost in the likes, I think. How are you finding it?
Yeah, exactly that. I think, like, for me anyway, it's like how do I balance everything, and I'm not very good at balance and like time organization and stuff like that. It's not really a strong quality of mine. So like when social media comes into the equation, it's like, okay, how do we balance this so you can still connect to people that love your music, and like how do you give a different perspective of your life and connect as a person,
Yeah, and I think that's it. Yeah, I mean, you seem to be trying to do it. You're not getting lost. I know you went off grid for a week or so, and you were away. And I think for us, it's quite we quite like that as well. We're not like, why has the artist gone away for a week? After their albums come out. But it's just like it's just real life, isn't it? And you just need to be able to do that and get on with things. I think, and I think that's the main thing is delivering quality music, and then hopefully when things are back up and running, getting out there and playing the music to people and just getting that real feedback and promoting it that way is the best way as far as we're concerned about promoting music.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you have that perspective as well. I think when I last week I just went off grid. When I'm recording this anyway, I went off grid and sort of just had some time out and just wrote a load of new music, and for me that was like, where does that come from? Is that because of the balance? Like, is it restricting on time or limitations or whatever? But I think it was just having that time to sort of recalibrate after, especially a year of making music, just have a nice little bit of time off. I think it can really sort of reprogram like the way that you view music and the music creation process. It just completely, it switches a different light on in your head. So yeah, does you a world of good. So yeah, that's when the social media sort of, you have to hang on a second and then bring it back.
Great. Look, Louis, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today as well. So it's been great. And yes, look, I'll just mention again, check out the Hemai album, Hemai, Strange Beauty, out now on Tru Thoughts. It's on CD if you're into physical product, but streaming digital you can download as well. And look out for, Hemai hopefully soon live near you somewhere. Thank you, Louis. Take it easy.
Cheers, Rob. Nice one.